here. I want to thank everybody for joining. And we'll have other folks coming in as we kick off 2021. What we wanted to do was actually to, because we still can't meet face to face, it was actually crank up a Zoom general foundation meeting to be followed by our board meeting. The format, of course, for these meetings is going to be a little bit different from when we would normally meet face to face up in Kazi or elsewhere. We're not going to, spend the entire hour, on foundation business. We don't have a featured speaker. We'll definitely emphasize the Tapio moment and our interchange here. I certainly want to welcome and encourage the same sort of dialogue and discussion and open sharing that we've always enjoyed as part of a foundation meeting. But I do encourage everyone to note that, yes, we're in Zoom, and those of you who, of course, have been through innumerable Zooms over 2020 know that there are certain protocols for managing expectations and managing audio. I encourage everyone to keep their audio on mute, unless they're ready to, share and make a comment. And as a tip, mind you, if you just hold the space, if you're on mute, and you hold the space bar and keep that space bar depressed, you'll temporarily unmute yourself. So you can hold the space bar, you'll go unmute, and then you can go back onto mute by releasing the space bar. So that's an easy way to, participate and yet not forget that you could clobber the entire meeting experience for everybody else. Anyway, welcome. And what I'm going to do now is share a screen and get into some of the presentation materials that we wanted to share. First off, I was fascinated by the way that I always like looking at what the year of the what the National Garden Bureau determines to be the plants of the year. And so hyacinth, sunflower, garden bean, and monarda and hardy hibiscus are the plants that they've chosen for 2021. Now, I want to stop right here and say I have no idea what a monarda is. Does anyone want to share?
Yes.
It's
Michael?
bee balm.
It's bee balm.
Yeah, it's bee balm. The bee balm and bee balm. They attract bees.
Interesting. Does anybody grow it?
I have at least 2 different varieties. There's a light lavender one that's a native variety.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting.
It's the fourth plant. It's the fourth plant over in your picture underneath there.
Right.
I've had it in my garden a number of times, and I've had a trouble with it getting that white moldy stuff.
Interesting. Are there a bunch of varietals, cultivars of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's quite a few, but a lot of them are not frost hardy. It's only I've only had really good luck with the native one that will actually winter over.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, indeed, this is the one that these are the plants here for the year. So that, I was interesting how the garden bean, that's exactly how they played it out, by the way, not a particular variety of garden, just the garden bean. So I suppose anything you want to put into the category of garden bean will be successful. Anyway, welcome to the new year. Hey, so what we're going to do here today is that we have a welcome. I'm going to go through some gardening to-dos. Kathleen Sace, a regional biologist and botanist here in Pacific County, will be joining us to talk about some very unique books that she's going to recommend for 2021. We're going to recap financials for 2020 and actually give you a preview of the 2021 budget that we plan to share and discuss at the board meeting that'll be following this. I'll ask all of us to share any announcements and any feedback, and we'll continue on. First of all, of course, it wouldn't be at foundation meeting here if we didn't recognize birthdays in January. Cindy, I know you're online. Happy birthday. Karen, you're there. Happy birthday. Michael, your birthday's coming up. I mean, like Wednesday, right? Pat, Chuck, Lori, Garnet, and of course, my dear bride at the end of the month. So happy birthday all. So, and mind you, this is a good tip. If you're on the meeting here and you don't see your birthday up here, that's a clear indication you probably haven't submitted your recommit form back to Alina or to Mary Shane, indicating, that, that your login all your credentials are known. So, try.
Jane is no longer collecting the recommitment forms, so send them to me.
Directly to Alina. Very
Yeah.
good. Thanks, Alina. So New Year's resolution, one of the key things I wanted to pick up here is that this has been such a phenomenally stressful year just passed. And as we move into 2021, one of the key things that I was picking up in some of my readings is that it's time to show some self-compassion for ourselves here. And I was struck by this quote from Manley Hopkinson from his book, Compassionate Leadership. Be fundamentally happy with who you are. And this is this sense of being positive and staying strong to ourselves and staying strong to our core is that, gosh, given what we've just been through in 2020, and given the fact that it's going to be a pretty long, hard slog through 2021 before we're out of all this, it's not with idle thought that I suggest this to be a resolution for all of us here as we move forward. Any other comments about 2021 and New Year's resolutions from anyone? You've all given up on making resolutions for the new year? So a reminder, though, in terms of our years and things that haven't changed, is that we're all meeting here today as members of our Master Gardener Foundation. And as a reminder, of course, is that we as a foundation are a separate 501c3 nonprofit corporation recognized by the state of Washington and by the IRS. And that is unique from the Master Gardener program that we all recommit ourselves to as managed and monitored by WSU. And so as Alina was mentioning earlier, the recommit form is a form that we send in each year to sign up again to the program. And that is when we recommit, we are recommitting to the precepts of WSU. And this becomes very significant from a legal standpoint and from a representation standpoint, is that the policies of the WSU Master Gardener program are very important for us to follow, especially those regarding pesticides and other recommendations for crop management. Regarding the foundation, this is the remembership or remembering form that we submit to the foundation that simply says that, hey, we as Master Gardeners for the WSU program, we want to be a member of this foundation, the Grays Harbor Pacific County Foundation. Our bylaws specifically say that any member in good standing of the WSU Master Gardener program in Grays Harbor Pacific counties are welcome to become members of the foundation. It's not necessary, however, that we do become members of the foundation, but you're all invited, of course, and welcome, because again, what we can do as a foundation are things to help further the program. So the purpose of the program, of course, is that we're here to help reach communities with research-based information. Research-based information. This is so important, especially now when we're getting so much information over the internet and from unauthorized sources. And this, of course, leads us to what we do as a foundation, because what we can do as a foundation, educate and inform. We can fundraise as a foundation to fund and fuel the programs we support. And of course, we come together in programs like this just to engage and to be together as part of a community. With that, a reminder then that back in October, we held our virtual election, far less contested than the national election, as we all know. And your elected board, as we're pushing forward into 2021, is as here. I note outstanding here is that we left open the slot of president. I'm happy to fulfill as the roles of vice president and all the responsibilities there too. But I really want to encourage us to elect someone from Grays Harbor County, given that's where the population is at, and the majority of our members. So a president being able to represent all of the foundation would really best be suited be coming from Grays Harbor County, given that's where the bulk of the activity and the membership are. But a big shout out then to everybody who's on this board here, and for everyone on the call, an encouragement, right, that support for the programs that they're involved in become very important and very welcome. So particularly for John, Margie, Terry, and Cindy, there's plenty of opportunity for volunteer activities and volunteer support for the gardens, for the programs, and for it. And as you'll be hearing later as we get in the new year, for some of the youth activities and some of the educational outreach that we have planned. So reminder then that Tony Gwynn is our liaison educator, our facility liaison into WSU. Tony, of course, is a faculty liaison with WSU, and we have to have that faculty liaison as part of the program. Alina is our coordinator. We definitely are eager to have additional coordinators, and so we are funded and fueled to have at least 2 coordinators. So we would welcome anyone interested in becoming a coordinator. There's an honorarium, a reminder, there's an honorarium that goes with that role. And of course, if you actually would calculate the hourly rate that honorarium pays for, it's probably a whopping 62 cents per hour. But having said that, it's just that the opportunity to engage with our members in the program is really significant, and we would very much welcome a partner for Alina. Notice that Elizabeth is was our coordinator for last year, and as we've made note, it's not necessary that your first name begin with E in order to become a coordinator. We're very willing to accept coordinators with any name. So with that, we go into the 2021 calendar. Couple reminders, in that, as you read in the as you read in the e-news that came out last Friday, the Home and Garden Show is officially canceled. We will not have a Home and Garden Show for 2021. As Terry pointed out in the e-news, it would be too cumbersome to try to schedule a Home and Garden Show, perhaps only to have it delayed or pulled back if we can't reliably commit to the fair grounds and to our vendors that we've got a fixed date and a solid date. So we're going to scrub it again for this year. However, note that we do have the Mother's Day plant sale that's locked and loaded on May 8th and 9th. And so that's the Mother's Day weekend. It was a very successful plant sale last year in 2020, as you recall. We intend to replicate that and do even better this year. We probably anticipate having additional plant sales as part of the garden tour in Satsop. And Terry, I know you're online here. Are we solid on the date that we propose for the garden tour yet, or are we still negotiating for a date?
We are not solid for a date yet. It will probably be the third Saturday of the month, but that hasn't been confirmed yet.
And so the plan is to delay locking that in until we have a much better handle, right, in terms of our permissibility for having events and gathering, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Terry?
As soon as I get my vaccine, we'll plan a date.
Terry?
Yes.
I have to reserve the reader board, so should I set it as the third week in, was it September, you said?
No, it's July. It'll be July as usual.
Oh, you're going to do it on the regular month then?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I'll go and reserve the reader board for that week then, right now. So if you change it, let me know, please.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the demo gardens and our demo beds are open year round. And it, Cindy and Bev and Brenda for South Bend and Sushila from Ocean Shores, consult with them relative to protocol for volunteer activities in those beds. A shout out to the Elma bed in particular, where there was, the harvest that was contributed to the food banks in Grays Harbor. We're measuring that in hundreds of pounds. So it was not an insignificant effort at all from all of your efforts in terms of managing that, the garden and the community yields out of that. Similarly, we had some quite a bit of produce produced from the South Bend Community Garden, and
Damn it.
and lots of activities up in Oahu and Ocean Shores as well. Any other comments and big dates that we need to make sure that we want to make sure we're starting to alert people on as we enter this year?
Just one, Kelly. Katie's going to be on KBKW again on January 20th. What a date, at 9 o'clock on KBKW. And you can email comments into KBKW at doug@kbkw.com. That's January 20th at 9 a.m. 14:50 a.m.
The good news is we all are going to be paying attention on January 20th. And we probably will be listening.
Yes, I
Kelly?
don't know how.
Yes, Karen.
The Advanced Education Conference in September is going to happen. And so, and I'm trying to look for the dates. I have all my, do you remember the dates exactly, Erin?
I think it's the September 30th through October 2nd.
Yeah, that's because our meetings at the conference is September 30th. And the good news is that if we are still not allowed to gather, they are going to have it be virtual. So plan on attending at least part of the conference. Get your continuing ed hours and support our state foundation.
This is very important, and I'm very pleased, Karen and Aaron, that you're reminding us of that, is that as we get into this 2021 year, it is going to be a challenge, right, to maintain our CE hours. And so knowing confidently that we have that state education conference coming in September is going to be a huge gain for us. So that's great. And please keep sharing updates as you get them from the state, and we'll make sure that we're locking and loading them on.
Thank you.
Any other dates? Any other dates we need to be paying attention to? So a reminder also that we're continuing a scholarship program. The scholarship that we offered last year was very successful, and Trish Bradbury is leading her team in the 2021 program. This is Trish is asking, as we noted in the e-news, to help spread the word and make sure that graduating seniors throughout both of our counties, right, are can be accessing this opportunity. We're only going to budget for one scholarship, but I want to make sure that folks know is that, depending upon the quality of the candidates and so forth, I certainly on the board are going to be encouraging us to increase the number of scholarships to the extent that we can acknowledge that these student needs. We all recognize the importance of scholarship funds in helping kids get in and maintain their college education. So I'm very pleased that we're able to continue this again this year. Reminder also, of course, that if you haven't signed up for it, at Amazon, for a charity of your choice, do so. Jeff Bezos made a lot of money last year, and he likes to give away a little tiny bit of it to nonprofits. And so if you're on smile.amazon.com, you can choose a nonprofit of your choice. It doesn't have to be ours. It doesn't have to be at our Master Gardener Foundation. You can see there in the screen that I do support the Master Gardener Foundation as part of it, as part of my purchases. This is automatic. You don't have to do anything. You just, when you're, as part of your normal shopping on Amazon, right? They take 0.5% and give it to the charity of your choice. Fred Meyer, amongst other grocery outlets, also has, you know, a community rewards program. I encourage you to make use of those as we get into this year. We all know we've been doing a lot more online shopping during these times. So you know, let's help them support the nonprofits we care about. With that, I want us to take a deep breath and welcome Kathleen Sace, a botanist who lives very near us here in Pacific County and who has spoken to us, by the way, as master gardeners from time to time at various programs we've had. Kathleen was sharing with us, with a few of us late last year, on some very important, significant books that she thinks are going to be, that are very timely. And and there's one thing that there's one thing that we all do have a lot of these days, is that a lot of alone time, or alone-ish time, at which taking in a good book is going to be quite appropriate. And there's a theme that I'll let Kathleen speak to here as she shares us these 3 books that she's recommending for our 2021 reading. Kathleen.
Yeah, sorry, Todd, I was away from the, had to go to the door. We had a voter show up and want some information, so I apologize for that. So I told Kelly about these books a week or 2 ago, 3 books that I ended up reading together over the holidays this year that really kind of hung together very nicely. I want to give you a little backstory before I get started, because it's going to explain to you my interest. I studied algae in college, and I came very close to being to specializing in kelp. And I ended up in lichenology instead, long story. But I've never forgotten how fascinating algae are in their lifestyles, because they're so different from vascular plants, but also how important they are in our climate here on Earth and climate control. You may not realize that blue-green algae and green algae both are the organisms responsible for creating an oxygenated environment on planet Earth. And over 1 billion years ago, these species transformed our atmosphere from a reducing environment in which metals could sit at the surface like iron and not rust because there was no oxygen, to an oxygenic aerobic environment that we're used to, where metals rust very easily. That transformation took hundreds of millions of years, because anything that could attach an oxygen, as the bacteria created it and the algae created that free oxygen, took it up. It's responsible for the rust belt iron band formations around the world. Many billions of tons of oxygen were fixed into those irons. So the backstory for algae is these are truly planet changers. So that brings me to book number 1, Slime: How Algae Created Us, Plague Us, and Just Might Save Us. This book's written by Ruth Kassinger. She is a nonfiction writer who has written a number of children's books on history and science. This is her 3rd book for the general population. The other 2 are A Garden of Marvels and Paradise Under Glass. I just finished A Garden of Marvels. I got that one through Timberland. And it's about, it's her take on botany and how gardening revealed more botany to her in her own yard. I found it very interesting reading. I'm not going to go read sections of it, though. It was just hilarious. I was reading to Frank the other night, and he's like, you know, I like electrons, right? Not green stuff. It was really funny. Anyway, so she talks about evolution of bacteria and algae, you know, kind of the backstory, the food we get from algae, toxins. Many cyanobacteria produce toxins, and they are very problematic for wildlife, livestock, and for people. And then towards the end of the book, then she delves into the current research on producing oils and edible oils and fuels from algae, which I found fascinating, because we know that they have tremendous potential to produce both fuel supply oils and also oils that have essential fatty acids in them for human use. And then she talked, as you might guess, about algae and changing climate and how algae could be used to help moderate this. So I found all of that fascinating as a former algologist. The surprise for me was to learn that during one period of supercontinent formation, now several billion years ago on planet Earth, subduction slows down when supercontinents form and then ceases for hundreds of millions of years, sometimes a billion years, when the continents just sit there in stasis. There's a little volcanic activity going on, but there's not really a lot of subduction. And during one of those periods, about 50 million years ago, the Arctic Sea was ice-free. That was in a period when we were ice-free as a planet. And for millions of years, the Azolla fern, which is a floating fern that has blue-green algae growing in nodules in it, formed very thick, warm mats every summer, and they sank to the bottom. And this happened year after year for millions of years. And that formed the oil that's in the Arctic. It came from those Azolla mats. That was a total surprise to me to learn that. The takeaway for me from this book was that propagation methods to grow kelp and nori are very well established. Tank grown algae for oil and fuels are doable if we can get the market forces to align. And we definitely have an opportunity here to grow local algae, kelp and nori, both in estuaries, to develop a market, but also to help fix carbon. When you grow seaweeds in estuaries, you actually help reduce acidification of the salt water for shellfish. And so there's a huge shellfish benefit if we can do this. That was a very big deal for me to really look at the numbers and realize, yes, we could really make a difference, help our local seafood producers, improve water quality in the estuary, and have another marketable product at the same time. So fascinating book, great title, really, really enjoyed it. Now, the second book was, I didn't expect it to be a lead on from the first. I thought I was going to get kind of carbon chemistry. I studied organic chemistry in college, and certainly took a year of organic chemistry classes. So the second book was a real surprise to me. It wasn't a textbook at all. It was very approachable and highly readable. Symphony in Sea: Carbon and the Evolution of Almost Everything, written by Robert Hazen. Hazen is a mineralogist and astrobiologist. He has put out hundreds of papers on both topics. How life forms has been a long-term research focus of his. And of course, there's an algae tie-in. He does come back and look at algae a little bit in this book. He is the executive director of the Deep Carbon Observatory, which is an observatory that started in 10 years ago in 2010, which was aimed at transforming our understanding of carbon's role in Earth. A lot of the things that carbon does and how carbon works in the atmosphere and underground, we really don't understand very well. And the Deep Carbon Observatory formed to help focus on that and help resolve some of those problems. He's also written or co-authored 12 books, and he is a musician. He's played in symphonies for years. I believe he plays a trumpet. So the book basics, the book's divided into 4 sections: earth, air, fire, and water. In earth, he talks about carbon as an element, including how it forms. Spoiler alert, you should already know carbon forms in supernovae. We really are made of stardust. All of the elements that make us up form in stars. The air section talks about the climate on Earth before air, and then the deep carbon cycle, what goes on in the atmosphere as well as in the planetary interior, and then changes in the atmosphere over time. So it was a really nice follow-on to slime because it kind of recapitulates a lot of the changes that happen with oxygenation of the atmosphere. The fire section is about carbon and materials chemistry and about stuff. And then the water section is about carbon and the evolution of life. Now, the surprise for me in this book, I have a side interest in geology, was to learn that mineral evolution has become increasingly more complex over time. The number of minerals in the solar system started at about a dozen at the time of its formation. There are 92 minerals, I think, known from the Earth 4 billion years ago. And the known number of minerals now in the solar system that is on Earth and outside Earth is about 5,300, and they don't think that the end is near in terms of finding minerals. I was fascinated by that. There's a whole mineral evolution along with life evolution going on. So the takeaway, as you might guess, is that we exist because of carbon itself. Its chemical properties are very complex. It can form four chemical bonds, which gives it a huge flexibility in making new compounds. And yes, life is formed as stardust. We are all stardust. So the third book is a novel, Ministry for the Future, written by Kim Stanley Robinson. Kim Stanley Robinson was the first novelist to use the word Microsoft in print years before the company Microsoft formed. He writes future fiction and science fiction. He's written now 19 novels. My personal favorite among his novels is one that came out about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, called The Years of Rice and Salt. And it is an alternative history of the last couple millennia of human evolution on the planet. Many of his novels have ecological, cultural, and political themes, and he often features scientists as heroes, so it's a personal favorite of mine. I'm a scientist, so hey. I'm going to give you a heads up about his format, however. He is a multi-line story writer. His books routinely move between multiple plots, multiple characters, and vignettes. So you have to be kind of alert to pay attention to, are we in a vignette? Are we in plot line number 5? Have we moved back to plot line number 4? But if you can cope with that, it can be very complex, very entertaining reading. The basic approach of this book is that he's tracking the first couple of decades of a new UN ministry, the Ministry for the Future, starting in 2025. Through the retirement of its first director, Mary Murphy, a couple of decades later. And it plots through what's going on politically, what's going on culturally on the planet, worldwide, what's going on ecologically. There are lots of vignettes. And if you do any reading in land restoration projects, know some of the projects going on around the world, they're going to get mentioned. A lot of well-known projects get mentioned as sort of success stories on the road to a carbon neutral, carbon management future for the atmosphere. As the Ministry for the Future gets rolling, its startup process is juxtaposed against people living through horrific events with global warming. Really nothing I hadn't read about before, but putting it in the context of a novel really kind of brings it home. If you've been ignoring what's going on here and ignoring the wildfires going on elsewhere and ignoring the diseases and the floods and stuff, this book will bring that all home. But it's actually a very optimistic book overall. The takeaway is that climate control is possible, something we knew a couple decades ago. The question still is, are we going to develop the political will to make it happen? So while reading all 3 of these books, I kept going back to my computer to check on programs, details, and was led into new areas for future reading. I found the 3 of them together made a beautifully balanced triad for the winter blahs as it's raining and pouring outside.
Kathleen, those are super recommendations. As you noted on each one of the slides, I made note that all these books are available at Timberland. And I will note that I've already put a hold on the carbon book, so but there's plenty of copies available of these. Questions for Kathleen? Comments on these books? Michael.
Well, this is just a brief. This is for you, Kathleen. This is what I've had a fascination with seaweed, and this is handmade by me. I'm actually making a pendant that's a seaweed that I wove around a cowrie shell, and then you can look on the back. It's totally immersed. It's one piece of seaweed. I think it was about 12 feet, but I've been working with seaweed as an art medium for years, and of course I've read slime. We actually had a study group, Kathleen, with Jude Armstrong on reading slime, and I agree with you. But yeah, I've been working with seaweed for years. It's food. I mean, I've made pickles out of seaweed. There's twice as much calcium in seaweed and magnesium, B12. I've cooked. I've made sweet pickles. I've used it as a I've actually gone and harvested it. So I think it's great.
Yeah, one of the things that I wasn't really aware of was our need as a species for iodine and
Yes.
for omega-3 fatty acids. And we get those from seaweed. It turns out
Yeah.
we've got a very close tie evolutionarily as primates, because our need is higher than other primates. As primates, a very close tie to sea products to provide us with those things we can't get any other way.
Well,
What-
what's fascinating, the Japanese have actually, their DNA has changed, and they eat a lot of seaweed. And there's actually one of the things that slime brings out is that the Japanese actually have an enzyme. They're the only ethnic group that apparently does that, for helping to break down the cellulose and everything else in seaweed to eat it. But because they've eaten so much seaweed, they actually, their system has an enzyme, which I guess Western Caucasians don't have, for breaking down seaweed because they've been eating so much. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was fascinating to read. Yeah, it's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what kind of seaweed you use to wrap around your cowrie shell?
It's well, I'll give you a brief story. Is that it's bullwhip kelp, and the way it started was I was just walking along the California beaches, and I noticed the long strands of bullwhip kelp, and I thought, God, that looks just like rope. I wonder if I could work with it to tie Celtic knots and that sort of thing. So I basically would spend hours down at the beach stripping off the leaves and getting, I think 18. This one I think is about 18 feet of 12 to 18 feet of seaweed, just this one piece. And then I'd hang it on lattice and then dry it. And then of course what happens when it's exposed to the sun, the green chlorophyll is burned out, and it just leaves you with the brown and red chlorophyll. So there's no greenish. And I've made rings with this. I've actually made lampshade rings with it. So, but just regular bullwhip kelp. It's a very, like I say, it's cellulose, and it's made totally out of cellulose. And so when it dries, it's the same thing as wood, so.
Right, right. Minus all the gel. Yeah.
Well,
that kelp grows off Tillamook Head and also up off the Olympic Peninsula. So it's right here in our area.
The bullwhip kelp is up here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they both grow here along actually both species.
Oh.
Nereocystis and macrocystis both grow here in the Pacific Northwest. You can find them on the ocean beaches here.
Cool. I'm going to be calling you.
Okay.
Other questions, comments for Kathleen? Has anyone ever heard of these books? So we've talked about slime as being a book we've had the study group on, but how about the carbon book or the novel, or the Hazen as a novelist?
No.
We'll make note of these and check these out. Kathleen, thank you so much for these recommendations. Indeed, we are, given the dreary months that we are in, right? And those of us that we've not seen the sun, right? In how many weeks now? So.
Oh, it was only a few days ago for a couple hours.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, thanks for having me, Kelly.
Anyway, thank you very much for the sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay. So what we got here is that we move forward here is that it's time for our January to-dos. Recall that OSU publishes, right, a monthly garden to-do list. And these are all available online. And it's one of the most important things we need to be thinking about here as we get into the month here. To this point, it's this garden journal thing is something that OSU always talks about as something we all need to be doing. And I'm always curious in asking, who amongst us actually is diligent about putting together a journal and writing down diligently. Yeah, Michael, not surprising, Michael, that's for sure. Jan, very good. Aaron, congratulations.
I managed for 2020. I've never been successful before, so.
It is indeed so significant when you start thinking about just layout and so forth. And of course, it's time to start thinking about seed orders. And I'm presuming everyone's got their seed catalogs already arrived from the mail here, right? And we're thinking about this. By the way, I'll note that one of the key questions I get around this time as a master gardener are questions from friends asking about, what seed should I choose? So it is appropriate for us to be thinking about folks who especially are gardening for the first time. And I've actually been asked to, I've actually been building some, I've actually built some containers for some friends and neighbors who wanted to get into gardening this year, specifically because of the pandemic. And so their questions now that they're following on, now that I've delivered these containers to them, saying, okay, now what do I grow in them? Right. So it is indeed appropriate to start thinking about, what species and cultivars are going to be appropriate for the microclimates, right? The microclimates in which everybody's growing their gardens in. A quick shout out, of course, for maintenance under oiling, sharpening, sterilizing tools, mulching. And of course, I will always remember Don Tapio's admonishment to remember to water. And of course, it sounds hilarious now, given the fact that as we open this meeting, talking about 11 inches of rain already this year. But there indeed are going to be some dry spells at which plants can truly, are truly going to need that water and be lacking. So.
Hey, Kelly, I have a comment about seed buying. I know Baker Creek Seeds, I got an email from them recently. They had to shut down their website for a week because they were getting order volumes 5 times of last year's volume.
Yep. Yep.
So don't wait too long to get your seeds or you're going to be out of luck.
Michael?
Yeah, well, I was going to coke at that. I've been buying, this is the second year I do that. I pay the $12 and I buy the Baker Creek whole seed catalog. It's incredible. Because they not only give you pictures, but they give you a history of each one, where they came from, how they were started. It's the Baker Creek, the whole seed catalog, the one, not their free one, but the one that you have to pay $12. It's well worth the money. I mean, it's about, mine is about this thick, and it gives you a history of where it came from, and it's well worth the money.
Aaron's admonishment to move quickly on this thing is appropriate. I recall that last year in 2020, the local nursery store here had to order seeds 4 times. So instead of, so even from a wholesale standpoint, he was deluged with orders. Sharon, I cut you off.
Baker Seed. If you ever get a chance to go to their farm,
Yeah.
their store is amazing. It's lined all the way around and has right down the center also, both sides, about 7 feet worth of seeds. And each section will be just one, like cucumbers. And there will be, it seems like thousands of different varieties.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating place to go.
Well, the thing I like about it too is that his family, Jared Gettle and his wife and his kids, is that you look at their faces and their family, their kids just look so happy and content. Did you get a chance, Sharon, to meet their kids, the family, when you were down there, the Gettles?
No, I did not. We spent maybe half a day there. They have a kind of like a village of, late 1900s, early 20s, or early 2000s village. And so it was kind of an interesting place to just go look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have gardens there that you can walk through too, trials, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, could I say something?
Please.
I'd like to recommend buying seeds from nurseries in the Pacific Northwest as a go-to for first. And there's some in Oregon, Adaptive Seeds. Up by Bellingham, there's Uprising. There's Territorial in Oregon, down south of Eugene. Anyway, there's just 3 of them. And I think looking for seeds from up here that are more suited, that'll grow better in our areas is a good place to start.
Well, Patty, One Green World is really good, and they're in
Oh, yes, yes, that
they're in
also.
Oregon. In fact, they do a lot of trials to try to take things that don't normally grow up here and breed for things that grow in the Pacific Northwest. And they've got some really good stuff, like with olive trees or anything that you wouldn't normally get. I also Richter's herb catalog they're out of Canada. But the thing I like about Baker Seeds, though, is that they're free shipping. And they always send free seeds with the order. And Territorial Seeds, it's just ridiculous, their shipping, in my opinion.
Now, I want to keep a focus on what Patty was saying, though, because that's a very key recommendation in terms of, when folks are asking us about recommendations in terms of cultivars to grow, right? Patty's right in terms of admonishing us to think about the heat units that we can command here, the types of cultivars that are going to grow well in the climate, proximity to salt and salt air that many of us have close to the coast here. So watering needs, attention needs, so a lot of big things that need to go into it. So let's make sure that we're not coaching our neighbors into an exotic cultivar that is going to be a little bit beyond their abilities to grow.
Yeah.
Reminder also, of course, this is the time of year to be thinking about soil testing, and this is that, I actually find that the OSU publication with the labs that serve, are far more appropriate for home growers as opposed to the WSU references, which are very appropriate for commercial growers, right? And so forth. So I think that some of the recommendations there for labs to have our soil tested from the OSU is where I found more value out of them. And of course, it's going to be very interesting, given all the rain that we've had this year, is that how much nutrient value is leaching out of our beds, even as we speak here. So, okay. With that, houseplants. And this is insect infestations, dust on leaves, cold drafts, time to propagate plants. And I really like this. It's a great idea they put in here. Is that putting annuals inside as house plants for extra color, for extra sharing. So what a great idea, of just cultivating flowers inside just for that extra approach, that extra set of color. Any other comments with respect to to-dos we need to be thinking about at this time of year?
So Sheila, the last time, Kelly, the last time Sheila was here, she was really concerned with ways of engaging engaging people into gardening. And I just was wondering if there was any follow-up with that. Like what are your thoughts about different, like with our trainees or just with the community at large? I know we have Katie, I was involved with Katie's workshops, but what are your thoughts, Kelly, about different ways of engaging people?
A couple of key thoughts, of course, is just making sure that we're getting the word out. Is that, a letter to the editor of our local paper or our local newspaper, whatever little, papers that are out there, reminding people that now is the time to be thinking about gardens. Now is the time to be thinking about seeds and so forth. So same thing with your Facebook post, your social media post.
Mm-hmm.
Presuming that Twitter's not shut down your accounts yet. I'm presuming you all would have an avenue to actually talk to your friends and to your circle, right, about, hey, now's the time to be thinking. We don't often, of course, we have to encourage people to hold back and don't start planning, right now, given the fact that we're in this winter deluge, of rain. But planning, is appropriate. And so whatever we can do to get the word out.
Okay.
Okay. So one of the key things that we have to wrestle with is, as a foundation, is that we manage and go through a lot of money for a lot of purposes. This is the 2020 income statement put together by Sharon KB and Renee Powell. We thank both of you most sincerely for managing our funds as transparently and openly as you have. What's interesting as you look through this data here is that we actually had budgeted a larger loss for the year in terms of the budget we put together in 2019, looking ahead to 2020. So the fact that we emerged through 2020 without a home and garden show per se, without a garden tour, with a loss of just under $5,000 is pretty incredible. So shout out to everybody that made things happen successfully and appropriately during the year. This is actually quite a success that we can report on. That's actually quite a bit better than a lot of other foundations across the state did. Sharon, do you have any other comments with respect to the 2020 funds?
Part of the reason this did as well as it did is that we had, I can't remember the exact amount, but we did get 2019's grant in 2020. So that helped us. So that $3,500 at the Home and Garden Show is mostly grant money. So otherwise we would have been down about 9,000.
Very good. So again, celebrating on 2020. As we think about the balance sheet as we end the year, the balance sheet, of course, is where you actually measure all of your assets. Your assets have to equal your liabilities. It turns out we don't have any liabilities here from an accounting sense. So the total assets equal our total equity in the program. And you can still see that we end 2020 with nearly $60,000. Sharon, I know that you reported that we received that you want to share with the group the phenomenal investment income that we have incurred over the year here.
Well, as you probably are well aware, CDs have kind of lost their luster. They aren't earning much. And so everything we have currently is in money market. I was looking for a November statement. There wasn't a November statement. The December statement on that $41,900 that we have in Edward Jones, we made 4 cents worth of interest. 4 cents. Not a
Yes.
pretty.
Yes, indeed. This is not a market for savers. Indeed, that's for sure. So, yeah. So, but again, you can appreciate that that while Sharon is tempted to invest in pork bellies and and wild futures on the internet, we do maintain a very conservative posture, and for investments, and unfortunately this is just the way it's going to have to be here, because I think that our tolerance for risk as a foundation is pretty minimal. So we're going to hold back. Especially, of course, as we start thinking about the fact that that it's quite a bubble emerging in the stock market right now. And but anyway, congratulations on us still having a bucket of cash. As we look forward to this year, to 2021, this is the budget that we're going to be discussing as a board in the very next meeting here. This is the budget that has been prepared by everyone, various departments and various committees, proposing to Sharon what they'd like to spend over this next year. So Sharon, are there any overall comments you want to make to the, I don't want to get into a lot of detail now, because again, we as a board will be discussing this and perhaps revising this. I want to assure people this is not the committed budget. This is the proposed budget that we'll be reviewing in the subsequent board meeting.
I don't think there's really any comments that need to be made here. I think the only thing that I've got where we'll likely, the executive program includes 2 coordinators. If we end up with 1, that'll be a savings of $5,000. That's really the only big thing. Donations I've got simply down because they have been down.
Okay. By the way, any comments from anybody in just glancing through here? Any questions that you'd like the board to wrestle with or to raise as we get into this discussion later? You can see that we do it as we spoke earlier. We will have a garden tour. We are expecting that to be a successful garden tour, especially so that that people are going to be so eager to get out and do something when we have that. We indeed, the plant sale is referring to the Mother's Day plant sale. It was very successful last year in 2020. So a repeat of that indeed is anticipated. You can see that the demonstration gardens and the demonstration beds, people, we want to invest in those activities as we look into the new year. And I'm very excited to see that we have additional monies being put forward for program support and for school youth outreach. Elizabeth Sims is going to be chartering some of that youth outreach. Has some investment plans and some activities. Okay. So again, with that, any other announcements, any other comments and sharing from anyone here? We talked about Katie being on the radio on the 20th of this month. A reminder that from Aaron and Karen about the state conference coming up at the end of September, to get that on your calendar now. I do believe that the International Master Gardener Conference will also be scheduled for September of this year, and that'll be held, we know that'll be held virtually. So that International Master Gardener Conference will be another opportunity for continuing education. That'll be coming up in September.
I had a question.
Please.
So for this year, continuing education hours are really easy to get because there's so many things being offered online. But I'm concerned about the program support hours, getting enough of those, given we're still in the middle of the pandemic and people are waiting for vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. So do you think the state is going to reduce that requirement of 25 hours, or do you have suggestions?
Alina, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, Patty and everybody else, we have been given the discretion to decide how many program support hours we'll be requiring for this year, just like for last year. And so at this point, I'm thinking that it'll be the same, 0 hours. But if you're out there in the gardens working, feel free to post those hours in, especially for our liability insurance. And, if you're doing things on Facebook, or if you're writing articles for the newspaper or doing youth outreach, all of those, even though they may not be required, all of those are important to post for hours for program support. But at this point, I have not gotten any direction from the state. And if it's like last year, it's up to our discretion as counties.
Michael, you had some things you were going to share.
No, I was just going to say that I thought it had already been decided. Elizabeth already decided that they were waiving the program support hours. That's all I was going to share.
So again, as Patty noted, Biju, the e-news does have a great section. This last e-news is a great section talking about continuing education opportunities, right? Online workshops and so forth. So be sure to reference that list as well. And of course, a shout out to the gardens and to the demo beds that are available. There's always maintenance that is needed. And of course, we are indeed, as both Elma, North Beach, Waco, and South Bend have demonstrated, right? We can successfully and safely get together and cultivate and manage the gardens appropriately. Yeah. So there's an opportunity there. Alina?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that those 3 books that Kathleen Sayce reviewed for us today, anytime you read a book that's related to horticulture, you get 2 hours of continuing education credit for that.
Oh, good. Because I was asking, I asked Katie, so I'm planning to do some book reviews, so we can claim 2 hours of continuing education just for reading the book, right?
Yes, as long as they're approved. If they show up in e-news, they're approved. Kathleen Sayce's books obviously are approved. If you're not sure, just send me an email, okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, the last continuing education thing on garlic I actually ordered the book written by Fillory Garlic Farm, so which I'm reading right now, and so I just wanted to know if I could claim that. But thank you.
As long as it's on the e-news or it's been approved by me, yes.
So Michael,
Okay.
I was afraid you were going to suggest a Marvel comic about the Master Gardener, right? As one of the Avengers, right? You know, that's for sure that.
I thought it was,
Superhero.
I
Why
thought it was
not?
only, I thought it was only 1 hour. For last year, I only counted 1 hour for slime and 1 hour for, I read another book about Humboldt that
Well,
Elizabeth
thought
approved
too.
for me.
Elizabeth told me it was 2 hours.
Okay, so I've got 2 more hours to put in then. Okay, I'll do it. Not
for
too
you
late
all.
to put in 2020 hours.
No, it's not. I'm going to be reviewing them this month, so make sure and get them posted.
Yep.
Well, that's a good reminder for everyone then, saying, so we should still go back and make sure we've got our 2020 hours updated so that we can get all that collected. Very good. Any other?
I had one other thing to say. Well, a couple of things.
Please.
Michael, I like your haircut.
Thank
It's
you,
the
Patty.
first time I've seen it. The other thing is I'm like so jealous, like you got your hair cut. Where did you get your hair cut?
I've had my wife cut my hair for years. I
Oh.
just basically since I'm not styling it, you know, she can say we bought some clippers, and you know, I go through my Nazarite routine every year and let it grow long, and then she just set her down and strip down. She cuts my hair. I jump in the shower, and that's it.
Well, it looks very nice.
Thank you.
Yes, these are the topics we talk about at the part of our foundation.
Yeah, right.
This is what the world has reduced us to here in 2021.
Kelly,
Patty, did you have anything else, Patty?
Oh.
No,
You're
that
okay?
was it.
Okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
Michael, final thoughts?
Yes. You know, I'm going to talk to, maybe I'll talk to Tony more about this, but I know that WSU has really concentrated on large scale agricultural. And I'm just wondering if I think it's a time to change that now, because as you've well testified there, even the seed companies are having people are gardening a lot. So, I mean, you know, how could we have WSU really concentrate on small scale agriculture, or CSA?
I'm sure any emails of encouragement to WSU Extension and encouraging them to support that Master Gardener program would be well appreciated, because we are indeed, as we've talked about before, we're kind of low on the funding total poll as far as WSU concerned. However, I'm not dissing on WSU. There's all educational facilities are undergoing. It's a real stressful time for funding for higher education overall, especially for the state land grant universities, including OSU and WSU.
Okay.
Any other comments for the good of the order? Because the point I wanted to close with is that we'll continue this format. February 9th is our second Tuesday, right? Followed by March 9th, right? You know, we'll indeed have sharing of information, sharing of thoughts. You know, we'll make sure we have a robust Tapio moment. The importance of us getting together until hopefully in the summertime, we'll be able to reconvene and come back together again face to face. We'll focus on these programs here as an opportunity to get together. I will record the programs as we're recording them today, and I'll post them up on our YouTube channel, and we'll make that recording available for folks that can't join us today. I want to encourage everyone, as a reminder, to check in with their friends, their neighbors, their Master Gardener colleagues. This is still a time at which being alone and being separated has definite, psychological and sociological stresses. You know, there's those of us that are able to get out and enjoy ourselves in our gardens and in our landscapes, have that built-in advantage of just getting that exercise in. Let's encourage others to, share in what we enjoy so much, as well as make sure we're looking out for our friends and for our neighbors during this time here. Any other thoughts? Please go
I have
ahead.
a couple of things, Kelly. Just wanted to let people know that we were talking about getting hours. Another way to get hours is to volunteer for the State Foundation. You do not have to be an elected member into the State Foundation to participate in meetings or volunteer for of the conference or any of those kinds of things. And the conference committee is actually looking specifically for 2 positions. They need a volunteer coordinator to coordinate all the volunteers for the days of, and they need a moderator coordinator to coordinate all the moderators, because there'll be 1 moderator in each of the sessions. So if anybody is interested in that, you can contact me and I can forward your information to the conference chairperson.
Good thoughts. Great opportunity to engage. Anything else for today?
Yeah, this is Kathleen Schaefer.
Hi,
And
Kathleen.
hi, good to see you all. I'm not sure if everybody already knows about this, but there's a continuing ed opportunity in February for 3 Fridays through Cowlitz County Master Gardener Program, Advanced
Yeah.
Master Gardener. And it includes plant diagnosis with Jenny Glass. So in the chat, I put the person to contact, Gary Fredericks at wsu.edu.
Cowlitz historically does a phenomenal job for that advanced education, and Jenny Glass's workshop on plant diagnostician is an outstanding workshop. Jenny is, of course, a WSU Puyallup, and this is her thing. So it's an outstanding opportunity and an outstanding review opportunity.
Right, and it's only $15 for the whole series.
That's a steal.
Yeah, thanks.
If nothing else, then I'm going to go ahead and conclude the formal meeting here. And